Things Locs, the podcast explores everything related to leadership, operations, culture, and strategy. I'm your co-host, Antonio Garcia. I'm here with Dr. Neissany, and also our guest for today is Brad Feinberg. He's the founder of the Feinberg Method. He is an incredible, world-renowned personal trainer that focuses on mindset and all different aspects around fitness. He works with some incredible talent, all the way from Imagine Dragons, the Grammy Award-winning band, Steve Aoki, one of the greatest DJs here in Las Vegas, and so on and so forth. So really a tremendous treat to be having him here on the podcast. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Brad, good to see you, man. Caught up last week, got to meet you. Amazing story. I just want to kind of kick it off actually with, we talked a lot about how you work with a lot of high-level performers, some of which Antonio just mentioned, but obviously it's not relegated just to music and entertainment, a lot of people in business. And I'm really curious to know what are some patterns you see amongst these people and kind of what gravitated towards you to work with them, and then just some other kind of takeaways that you see from them. And I know you had mentioned also that you've learned a lot from them. So I'm just kind of, we can start there and dive into that a little bit.
Sure. I started working with those individuals, high performers, business leaders, about 7-8 years ago when I moved here to Vegas. And I noticed the two things that they always had in common was high levels of stress and always needing to perform at your best 24/7. And as I was discovering this and working with them and really learning what they needed and how they needed to perform, that's when I really found out that stress is like the crux of everything. Honestly, both.
Tell me about it. Tell me about it.
Well, both good and bad, because when I say stress, I'm sure the first thing you could think of is like, oh, stress is bad. But actually, stress is what causes the body to adapt and grow and get better. But vice versa, if you are having literally every day having to manage, a multi-million or billion-dollar business, you're a startup, you're a brand new entrepreneur, that same concept can destroy you and break you down. So it was, for me, how can I develop and provide the right type of support, program, you name it, so they can always be at their best 24/7, but manage literally everything that they're perceiving and their body is going through. So that, for me, that was like, this is what sets these people apart. And the other side of it was their mindset. It wasn't like, what's had Dan be Dan was his mind. What has Steve be Steve is his mind. What has, Elon Musk be who he is, it's his mind, and how they're able to push through anything or do whatever needs to be done. Their commitment to their self and their vision is what sets them apart.
Yeah, so it also sounds like the stakes are high with those people too. It's like you're having to, it's a multi-million dollar production where you're traveling all over the world in different time zones, and a lot of things weigh on your performance. And it's like, well, that's like an entrepreneur trying to close a deal, in Europe and coming back. So would you also say like that high stakes situation makes them appreciate like their body a little bit more? Like, I need to work with someone like you to get that down.
Absolutely. And that's when I was very fortunate to start working with Dan. That's literally what he said to me. He's like, I am going through time zone after time zone, sleeping on buses, sleeping in a different hotel bed every night, whatever it is. And that's when he realized that my body has to be at its best to achieve that 1% status.
So you brought up a fair point that it's not a matter of avoiding stress. I think it's a fair point to make, that it's pretty much unavoidable. But that's what you see a lot of people like, how do I avoid stress? Or, like my stress is leading to burnout. So if you could just maybe add a little bit to that of like more so maybe how to leverage your stress to actually drive you forward.
Yep, and that's exactly right. I would say most people are like, how can I get rid of my stress? You'll never get rid of your stress.
Oh man, we're all hoping for like, this is how you do it.
I know, right? But if you look at a business, you have you have an infrastructure, systems and processes set up to grow and handle the different stressors that come into the business, whether it's it's a marketplace change, whether it's a competitor that opens up across the street, whatever it is. So if we look at that the same with the body, you need to have systems and processes set up to handle the marketplace.
What would be some of those things where we look at it with our businesses where it's like leadership, operation, culture, and strategy? Like, what would you say are some of those, I guess, key departments that the entrepreneurs, the individual, like you need to appreciate these things the same way we do with like our legal team or tax team or whatever?
Yeah, that's a great question. So simply put, you can have like sub teams and you can really get into it. So to keep this simple, the first big one I would say is around nutrition and gut health. And it's funny because like that's obvious. It's like we know we need to eat right, but we don't do it.
Food is good.
Food
is important.
Exactly.
We need some of that. Yeah.
Exactly. But if we really understand that, like looking at gut health, the gut is directly connected to the mind through the vagus nerve. So if the gut is off, well, this is going to go off. Same thing like if marketing is off, you're not going to bring in leads.
Your leads and sales could be off.
Exactly. Yeah. So nutrition and same with that, managing how much you're taking in. Mm-hmm. So if like we get,
I struggle with that. I'll be honest, it's right here.
Two-thirds of this country does. So it's like, but it's the same thing. It's like if you're getting an influx of a crazy amount of leads and you can't handle that properly, you're not going to be able to sell in the right way. Right. So quality and quantity inside of nutrition. The other side is exercise, another obvious one. But inside of that, why is it so important? When we look at how it not only impacts the mind through different hormones such as like dopamine, serotonin, adrenaline, oxytocin, which has us feel unstoppable whenever we're doing what we need to do.
Yeah, those are amazing.
But it develops.
That's nice.
But it develops the body to have you feel strong. And when the body is strong, so it does a lot of things. But when the body's strong, you are able to push through. Able to handle stress loads or physically handle things that, you wouldn't be able to if you were weak. So those are two of the big ones. And then the last one would be sleep. Like,
that one seems like it's a not so obvious one. Like it's like those are the obvious ones. And there's some other ones where you're like sleep. And it's like, as we get older, sleep requirements are a little bit different. What we need in terms of sleep quality in order to function is different as we age.
Yep.
That's like a not so obvious one, I would imagine.
It's so massive. Great example is like one night of bad sleep can amplify anxiety and depression the next day. Like one night. Yep. Now you may think. Now let's be okay. Yeah.
I got twins who I rarely sleep, and I'm like, why am I so anxious today?
Yeah, exactly. Now, okay, one night you could get through one night, but that starts to add up. Let's say you're doing late nights at the office or whatever. Next thing you know, at males we can get away with 7 to 8 hours. Ladies need more like 8 to 9. But if that starts to shorten, next thing you know, you're averaging 6. Next thing you know, you're averaging 5. You have kids in the equation. Now you're averaging 4 to 5.
2 solid hours.
And the quality has gone out the window.
Yeah.
That adds up. Then when we look at your adrenal glands, cortisol levels, testosterone levels, thyroid levels, it goes up when it should be down. It goes down when it should be up. And now you wake up one morning and you're like, why do I feel like crap?
I was going to say a snuffleupagus, but yeah.
It's same thing.
Okay,
but that is like sleep is, if anyone gets anything out of listening to this, it's like you have to, it's not even like you should maybe think about sleep. No, it's like you need to make sleep one of the top priorities in what you're doing to succeed.
So how does that then, working in a high performance space, I find that the mentality for some of those individuals is just, I got to grind.
Yes.
Like, I got to go all day, every day. If I'm not waking up at 4 a.m. to start work, I'm a lazy piece of shit. Like, how do you actually address those kind of issues with those individuals where they're pushing real hard, but then it's, well, I don't have time to even work out, or I don't have time to eat healthy. I gotta work. Yeah. And I gotta do what I gotta do. Like, how do you actually address that?
Yep. So a lot of the things I like to say is one, if you don't make it a priority, it will never become a priority. So when I see someone who's like that, what they've simply done is they've put work as the highest priority possible. And what they say more often than not is, I have to sacrifice my health to get my wealth. And then you fast forward 20 years, they're using that wealth to try and get their health back. And it does not have to be that way. So what I do a lot of times is it really comes down to simple time management and organization, but it also comes back to this. We have to shift the perspective on our culture around hustle and grinding. And that's the simple answer. There's obviously a lot more that goes into it, but it comes back to just setting a priority and coming down to, it's like, let's play the worst case scenario. You keep doing this, I guarantee you in so many years, you're not going to be feeling well. You're going to be using that money that you made to try and get your health back.
Fair point. So just, looking at that where you have like a journey, maybe somebody is coming to you and now they're maybe not at their worst, but they're close to it, right? Yep. They're like, I've either maybe neglected my health for the last X amount of years and I feel like crap. For me being in the healthcare space, I see kind of like the same mentality where it's just, that's not going to happen to me. And then it does happen to them. And then they still want to expect quick results. Like, all right, I treated myself like shit for the last 10 years, but can you get me feeling great in like 4 weeks? Like, is that something that you encounter? And honestly, can you speak to the person who's like, dude, I feel great. I have energy. Like I sleep 4 hours a night and I'm fine putting in the 90 hours to build out my dream.
So yes, there is a lot of that where, like you said, they've gone 10 years and then they expect like that to be feeling better. And it really just comes down to taking it simply, like a simple approach. Because what I can say is you can start feeling better in a shorter amount of times. You may not be losing 20 pounds or fixing your hormones in a month, but you can absolutely start feeling a difference. And you can even cause significant change around the gut health in 3 to 4 weeks. So it's really just about setting up the right expectations. And so if we look at how brain chemistry works, if we think about right now, like our dream anything, dream body, dream health, dream business, dream life, you start to get excited. And that right there is dopamine. So we can focus on that immediately to start building that motivation. And then that's another reason why exercise is so important, especially in the morning, because now we get adrenaline. Adrenaline's fun. Adrenaline allows you to punch stress in the face. Mm-hmm. So if we're working out, we're eating right, now we're getting motivation, now we're getting adrenaline, and we're getting that high to push us through our day. And then when we fast forward a little bit more, in about 2, 3, 4 months, that's when you can start to get elevated levels of serotonin. And that gives you that Zen type of feeling, that like true happiness type of feeling. And that's addicting. And then once we hit that 6-month mark, we're getting higher levels of oxytocin. That's that self-love. And that's like self-generated now. Because normally like oxytocin is that human touch. You pet a dog, you get that buttery feeling. Now you can start to generate that from within. That's addicting. So that's literally what I focus on someone with in the beginning who has that, I need to hustle and grind. Why do they want to hustle and grind? Because they're after that potential future that gives them that high. So how can we implement this in the right way so they're feeling it as fast as possible to keep them in for the long run?
That's pretty awesome. And you were also mentioning something a little bit earlier about like, your nutrition, your diet. And we just had an election. And part of it in the election was talking about making America healthy again. And there's been a lot of kind of exposure of the FDA of like, we're constantly fighting like inflammation from the stuff that's being put in our foods. Like there is, I'll use an example like Coca-Cola products that they make them differently when they're shipped out to Mexico with different ingredients. But that same manufacturer, that stateside, they make it different when it's sold within the United States. So what are some strategies that people can do in being mindful of like what they eat, how they eat, things that inflame them so that they can feel better faster? Yeah,
and that's a huge point because there's a lot of time for
there's a lot of
a lot of like
scientific
stuff going on that you could,
a lot of fuckery out there.
Exactly that you could go down the conspiracy hole around, but whatever the FDA is doing or not, whatever the pharmacy is doing or not, that's a whole different episode. But what you're saying, it's around focusing on certain types of food to essentially feed the good gut, feed the good bacteria in the gut. Because when it comes down to the gut, it's like good versus bad. And a lot of our foods out there are feeding the bad bacteria. Great example. You go to any fast food place, it's like the food is created with certain ingredients that allows it to be more addicting.
Yeah.
That could feed the bad bacteria. Maybe it's high sugar, whatever it is. So we go on this vicious cycle that we just become more addicted to it. And before you know it, you're lost. But so to change that, it's simply put, we just have to focus on ingredients that are feeding the good bacteria, which could be high fiber foods, fruits and vegetables, fermented foods that, could promote probiotics. So it's like a lot of it is we do understand, but then it's just about going to do it. But in what you're saying, it's literally just shifting the focus to certain ingredients that are less processed, less added sugars.
That's a good place to segue as far as like the ingredients for the individual. Because like some ingredients for someone else is like they're going to need an EpiPen and they're completely out. I thought this was actually kind of interesting. It has to do with redheads. Yeah. So redheads are genetic rarities. 1% to 2% are worldwide. Unique traits. They feel thermal pain more intensely. We're here in Vegas, so I'm sure
I'm screwed.
Yeah, you're screwed. Yeah, you're fried chicken out here. And then 20%, they need 20% more anesthesia. They produce vitamin D more efficiently due to a MC1R gene mutation. So kind of going back to your saying as far as like these ingredients, like there's some people that might be Samoan, that might have a certain body type. It's like you can look at someone and be like, they're biologically leaning in one direction or another just by looking at them. But that's not always the case with everybody. Going back to like ingredients and knowing what to feed yourself for your own body so you can perform at a high level, what steps do you recommend entrepreneurs, entertainers, other people do to hone in on that so it's a customized program specifically for them?
Yeah, great question. And simply put, the first thing I would do is get data. So get like a gut biome test, get a food sensitivity test. Now there's different levels of them, but any type of test is going to give you data on what's going on inside. So then from there, you can really see, hey, maybe I am more sensitive to a certain ingredient. And when I work with someone, I like to keep things simple because the body is confusing enough. So on one side of the table, I like to call best tolerated foods through experimentation, through anecdotal experiences, through research. We have found that these list of foods cause little to no distress on the gut. And when I say distress, it could be something as simple as like you get bloated for a couple hours, or chronically, it could cause cancer.
Explosive diarrhea
exactly.
That launches you into
100%, without a doubt. So those lists of foods are not going to cause any disturbances because the more disturbance on the gut health goes down, more inflammations, more problems. Then there's another list of foods that are more in the gray area, which I call moderately tolerated, which for some people are totally fine. And on paper, they are still very healthy. Brussels sprouts, red onions, peppers, tomatoes, like they're all healthy. But for some people, when they eat them, they have explosive diarrhea or skin irritation, whatever it is. And for the other group of people, they eat them and they're totally fine. So it's about get data, get tests done, and then you have to experiment. Maybe start with the best tolerated to allow your gut to kind of normalize, and then introduce these ingredients back in and literally see how you react. You'll know within like 30 minutes to an hour if that ingredient is flipping you upside down.
That was a little bit of your relationship with Dan Reynolds with Imagine Dragons, wasn't it?
Yep.
Was like you're just so used to doing the same thing, you almost grow tolerant of the numbness or whatever it is.
Yep.
Right? You're just used to it, like this is just how I am without thinking I need data. But that's kind of what happened with Dan. Like walk us through like having those conversations and doing it that way with someone like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember that exact conversation, and it was we were in the beginning of the year and we like just started on tour, and I remember he turned to me, he's like, I want to be like elite. And I was like elite. And when he's talking about like, he wants to be shredded, like
fucking yoked.
Yeah, he wants to look like a god.
Yeah.
And so that's when I said, okay, it's going to be a little bit to kind of get into that, but that's exactly what we did. We started with the best tolerated foods to normalize everything. And then from there, we started introducing ingredients one at a time. And we found out that like from a protein standpoint, he was really good with some ingredients and others not so much. Same with vegetables, same with fruits. And I started to create like a good list. I hate to call food bad, but we understand when I say like a bad list, it just means
favorable, for this guy, unfavorable.
Exactly,
just not that good
exactly.
For him.
Because no food that you eat is ever going to kill you, but we understand when I say exactly, not favorable.
Yeah.
And so we created this, and then I created meal rotations, because what we also forget is if we keep eating the same thing over and over and over again, the gut can actually build up an intolerance to it. So having like weekly or daily cycles of foods keeps the gut fresh. So it's not building up this tolerance to like let's say you eat chicken every single day. There is a chance that the gut could be like, I hate this because you're feeding it to me every single meal of every single day. Like F you.
Yeah.
So we built that out, and then within 6 months, it was like night and day on how he was performing, how he was feeling. His ankylosing spondylitis went into remission. His ulcerative colitis went into remission. On stage, women were going crazy because his shirt's off, his like six pack. And so it was like a lot of that was because of this process, training hard and sleeping.
So what I find interesting about that is he said he wanted to do something that he knew would take a lot of work, but he actually put the work in, versus there's a lot of people who simply say they want to do something and then you show them the roadmap and it's like, I thought this would be a lot easier. I just want, for those of you that are listening, just to kind of really pay attention. I know we're talking about, gut health and musicians, but the application is for you is to realize that if you want to do something hard, because there's plenty of people like, I want to rule the world, or I want to do X, Y, and Z, and then you show them how to do it. Okay, I don't actually want to do that. They just want to get the end result. They want the six pack without doing the work. It's like, I want to get the vibrating belt to strap onto my stomach and do all the work for me. You have to do the work, but maybe you could dive into the benefit of not feeling like you have to do it yourself, right? Because it could be very daunting to be either out of shape, or if you're in business, just shit's falling apart, and you say, how do I do this myself?
Yeah.
Versus getting like a coach or somebody along the lines that can not just help you create a plan, but also keep you accountable.
Yeah, I mean, when I wanted to start my business, I got help, So it's like, I even connected with you and I was like, I need help.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing here. Like, why do something alone that you don't know how to do? There's a chance you could figure it out.
It's a very logical approach to it.
Exactly. But there's a higher chance that you're going to mess up 1,000 times. You may eventually figure it out, but now you've wasted a year, 2 years. And in health, you wasting a year or 2 years could take 5 to 10 years off your life. Like, this is why
what's an example of that, of like doing that where it can really eat into that?
So,
by heavy drinking or drugs or something?
Absolutely. Great example. Let's go with like food and drinking. Let's say someone who is a weekend warrior, just likes to work out, maybe, let's give them benefit of the doubt 2 to 3 times a week, but it's the same thing over and over again. They have no type of progressive overload. They're not pushing themselves. They're just going in there to go in there. And their diet is maybe like 50-50, where maybe some times of the week, they're eating some good fruits and veggies, some good protein. And the other time of the weeks, they're out with clients, drinking, eating indulgent dinners. That part right there, and the lack of movement, and then I'm assuming their sleep is probably like, because they're drinking, because alcohol is a poison, it's going to shut down recovery, it's going to mess you up if you're doing that like more than one drink. So that starts to build up. That right there, that process, let's say they go through that for about 5 years. Alcohol alone will take years off your life. Eating improperly alone will take years off your life. Not sleeping enough alone will take years off your life. not move. One of the highest factors for all-cause mortality is weakness in the legs. Weakness in the legs. And the number one killer in this country is heart disease and heart attack. So now you put all these factors together, I give that person maybe they're living to 60 or 70. And they've tried to build this wealth. They get to 60 or 70 and then they croak and they can't even experience their legacy. That's a very real example that could happen.
No, what a shame. But, and then, you know, you think about those, how many people actually, they live that life, right? It's like, well, I'll wait to enjoy myself or let me kill myself over these few decades, right? And that's like, and then I'll enjoy it and then they drop dead. It's like, damn, dude, I had like 6 good months and that was it.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of curious, what actually took you down this road?
When I was 5 years old, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And from that point on, it was all about life and death in a sense of trying to make, like every choice we had to make was to survive.
Right.
But we discovered, when I say we, it was me, my family, and the support we had through Diabetic Educator. That's when I discovered the power of food and exercise. Literally seeing that if I eat a certain way, my blood sugar goes up or down or stays level. And saw the impact of exercise with that, playing sports. And it became an obsession of mine to essentially kind of beat this thing. So much of an obsession where the obsession turned into a passion. And my life, that's all it became, was just living with this, but really like trying to beat it. And then fast forward, I found out I had a true passion in wanting to help people. And with my success in very much controlling this disease, I wanted to give people that same opportunity. Because when I got to like college, I was realizing that everybody's got problems. You know, everybody has something that they're going through. And I wanted to give them the opportunity of exercise, of health. And that's when I realized that like health is the center of everything. Because if you feel like shit, you're not really going to be able to do anything that well. No. And that's how it really started. So I went to get my degree in exercise science, and then from there it was off to the races. But it was my diabetes.
It sounded like it was the thing that got you there was kind of that almost rebellious spirit. Yeah. Or it was. I kind of get a sense like it was probably a little bit of that. It was like, all right, well, you have this, therefore this is going to be your life, and you're like, no, I disagree. Yeah. I'm going to figure out a way to do it. And like, how many times is it someone just needs to tweak their mindset and lead themselves a lot better in order to get those results? Because the data is out there. It's just your body's going as far as where your mind takes it.
Well, not only that, but what's a shame a lot of these days is you go into the doctor's office and because they have a white lab coat, they say X, Y, and Z and you believe it.
Yeah.
And there's no extra support. It's like, here's your medication. Oh, that's not enough medication. We're going to give you more medication. Now you're addicted to it. And so we get trapped in this vicious cycle of pharmacy and poor medical system.
Dude, it's so interesting because like there's this issue with people where they try to self-diagnose themselves even through like WebMD and like, I'm going to figure this out this way. And it's like, that's probably one of the worst things you can do. But then also there could be some cases where they go into a clinic or see a doctor and it's like, they don't always have the best intentions. Yeah. And they could be pressured by their superiors to do something. And it's like, how does one maybe educate themselves a little bit more, a little bit better, walking into that, knowing it's like, I do need help. How should I maybe prepare myself going into that?
Yeah. And I do want to say there are a lot of amazing doctors out there.
Of course.
I understand the way I said
Very
that.
Small percentage.
Made them all sound like trash. But there are some truly amazing doctors out there. But when going into wherever you're going, specialist, doctor, whatever it is, if you get felt like they just treat you like a number, that's a red flag right there. Because there are, and I have a doctor that does not treat me like a number. He treats me like an actual person. So really what it comes down to is like care and love. As simple as that is, if you don't feel that from someone that is either giving you a prescription or giving you, like telling you how you should live your health, life, whatever it is. That for me is like the biggest red flag. And I feel like as humans, we can pick up on that. That's like our gut telling us like, yo, this dude, you shouldn't trust this dude.
Yeah.
But if it's really like, no, I want to help you. Like, let's figure this out together. You know, you're not just a number to me. Then you should like work to trust that individual or listen to what they're saying.
Yeah. So I think what you just said is, I shouldn't say I think. I know what you just said is really important because I find out a lot of people just, you have like one or two experiences and then you extrapolate that as like the whole field. Like, I had a bad doctor, doctors suck. And it's just, all right. Or you go maybe to 2 or 3 doctors and you're like, oh, they're all just kind of cold to me. And I guess that's what I have to accept. So it's really, are you willing to do a little homework and, find somebody that makes sense for you? And then the other aspect too, though, that I really like is just the ability to, like I said, just know that there's options and educate yourself on what that is, right? So it's like having respect for the person that's in front of you trying to help you, but also not just taking things at face value. And even kind of like circling back a little bit to the point about the FDA, it's just like do a little homework and find things out for yourself. And that doesn't mean to be a skeptic on everything, because I know that on the flip side, there are people who will never believe anything that comes out from a doctor's mouth. And unfortunately, there's been a lot of that over the last few years from vaccines and what have you, but it's just these individuals that do have the knowledge base. Yes, there are some different motivating factors for some, but there are compassionate people, plenty of people out there that are meant to help. You just have to do a little work yourself to find those, unfortunately. But
absolutely. No, I agree 100%. And it's like you said, it's do the homework. Really look into what they've done, how they've helped people. And the good thing is today, a lot of information is public, so
a lot of like even like simple Yelp reviews or going on Google and you're seeing the same thing over and over.
Yeah. So it's very easy to find out how helpful or effective or caring this individual is.
And this is also probably an area where people should maybe and I want to ask you maintain hope in this. It's like when you're fighting an uphill battle with a business, that's one thing. When you're fighting an uphill battle with like a marriage or something like that's one thing. But with your body, if you're talking to someone, they're like, I'm about to lose hope on this thing. What kind of conversation do you have with them to be like, don't lose hope. We can figure this out.
I go back to, it's like, what do you want? It's like, what do you really want? Because and I'll be honest, I've been in that scenario when it's come to like addiction and things like that. I've been to a point where I've like almost given up on hope. And it comes back to, it's like, what do you really want? Because when you get to that point, you have 2 options. You could go down one path that just ends one way, and that's you're in the ground. The other way is a life or a health body something that you truly dream and desire for. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's like focusing on that is what can keep you motivated. Because I'll be honest, I would say 99% of the times I wake up and I don't want to put on my shoes. I don't want to go for a run. I don't want to lift the weights because it is challenging. But what is addicting is when I know I get through it and I look in the mirror or like I look at myself and I'm like truly proud of what I'm building and what I'm becoming. And even with myself, what I do is like when I get in those moments, I picture like my 80, 90-year-old self. He's standing on a mountain. He's got long white hair. He's just jacked, long white beard. And I ask him, I'm like, how do I do this? And he's just like, you just do it. You just get up. You just put your foot forward. He's like, it's going to suck at times. He goes, but you are going to love the other side of it. So it just comes back to, it's like, what do you really want? And it's just, focusing on that.
So if I could just you said some really good stuff there. And I just want to go back to kind of put a bow on the healthcare aspect first. It's just those organizations that don't think compassion and empathy really matter all that much in medicine anymore. And it's just, you're dealing with high volume or, it's, you got to get through the day. And I totally get it. But there's still that aspect of that patient care or that high level customer service, if you want to call it that, where those things matter. Empathy and compassion for the person that's in front of you really does matter. And that's, Brad's example to a T. And then you said something really awesome about not wanting to do things in the morning, right? And I find that the people who are the most successful, they do the shit that they don't want to do, versus like, I don't feel like doing it today, so I'm just going to binge watch Netflix or scroll on TikTok. And then those are going to be a lot of the same people that wondering, why don't I have that growth, or why am I struggling, versus individuals who they do it regardless. And I find that's a misconception that all high level achievers, they always want to do it. And I remember watching an interview of Ronaldo, the football player, and he said the same thing. He's like, there's plenty of time I don't want to train, I don't want to get up, but I do it anyway. And there's a reason the guy is 39 years old and still going at a high level. Yeah. So I really could appreciate that, because I find that something that if more people just took that mentality, business, health would be dramatically different.
Well, and in coinciding with that, and this, what I'm about to repeat, like actually, there's a lot of science around it, but Huberman made it like very apparent in what he was sharing. When you look at discipline, people like doing things that you don't want to do, like that's what discipline is. There's a part of the brain that grows with that. So when you look at, let's say, someone who is fat, out of shape, just sits on the couch, that part of the brain is very small. But then they start eating right, they start exercising, doing the things they don't want to do, that part of the brain can grow. And that part of the brain is also very large in athletes and individuals who do things that are challenging. And what they've also found is that part of the brain is very large in people who are older. And what they're saying is that not only can that part of the brain like really empower the will, but also the will to live. So it's showing like, if you
it stretches your lifetime a little bit further. You develop that younger, it leads to a longer life, or it could lead to a longer life.
And that's what they're finding.
That's interesting.
Yep.
Brad, what is the best way for someone to get in contact with you, to work with you, to they're maybe a doctor, maybe they're a healthcare worker, they're an entrepreneur, they're an entertainer, where they're like, I really like what I heard and I want to see what I can do to work with you?
Best two ways. You can find me on Instagram at Brad Feinberg 88, or my website, thefeinbergmethod.com.
There you have it. Brad Feinberg. Thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me, guys. Loved it.